What the Mum podcast. My name is Maria Newman and I will be your host. Every mum to be knows that as soon as she becomes a mum, her world will change forever. Everyone is keen to give you advice based on their own experiences. Other mums delight in sharing their horror stories so that new mums are better prepared for what might happen. The lack of sleep, feeling exhausted most of the time, living in bodies with even more wobbly bits and never having any privacy. But everyone's story is unique. Everyone's experience is personal. On this podcast, I will be sharing real stories told by mums like you and I about their experience of motherhood and how life changes when you become a mum. This podcast is about showing you that you're not alone. We may not be in the same boat, but we are experiencing a similar storm. I hope these stories will inspire you to do what you want, be who you want to be. Anything is possible if you really want it and if it is really important to you. If you want to find out more about me and who I am, check out my website, mummyinabreak.co.uk. However, for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast episode. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. During this podcast series, I will be interviewing 6 awesome women who will be sharing with us their mum stories. My guest today is Erika Wirth, who has recently become a mum, having already been playing the role of stepmum for a number of years. Thanks for joining me today, Erika.
Oh, Maria, thanks for having me. I'm excited to dive into all things mommyhood.
So, Erika, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about who you are so we can get a sense of Erika, the individual?
Yes, it's a great question because if you're a mom, it's very easy for your whole identity to get kind of warped into mom, baby, and forget who you are. It's really funny, actually. I was interviewing a pelvic floor therapist way back, like in my second trimester, and her piece of advice for postpartum, of all the things she could have said, physically or diet or whatever, have a meal train. She's like, before you go into labor, like write out who you are, like write it out on a piece of paper and post it somewhere you can see it, because you're not going to feel like yourself at first for a while. You're going to be like, I don't even know who I am. Or, for me, like I just said that to my husband last night, like I still don't feel like myself. So having that like reminder of like things will go back to not necessarily the way they were, but like that's still who you are. Like don't forget who you are underneath this whole new reality of motherhood, which does change you in really fundamental ways too. So I think that was a really good reminder, because some of those pieces of like who I was, like I actually need them in my motherhood. I can't forget some of those core elements of, my magic and my sparkle, because me continuing to tap into that is actually really helpful for my son, that I don't just get lost in the grind of motherhood. So to answer your question of like who I am, like I am a lover of learning. I totally a personal development nerd. That's why I went to school to get my degree in psychology and went on to study to become a counselor, which I didn't complete, but then have done my own self-study and all things psychology, and now like dipping my toes into more of the manifestation and spiritual business world and health and wellness too. Like I just find the body absolutely miraculous and love learning how it's designed to self-heal, like creating the environment for it where it naturally thrives, and reducing, toxins and outside things that are harming my well-being mentally and physically. And I'm always learning something new. That's just like mind-blowing. And birth was a huge undertaking, and learning the human body's, just the capabilities it has for a woman's body to go through all of that. And I did a free birth. So there was no medical intervention whatsoever. It was just my husband and my mom at my house when I gave birth. So that was like a true testament. Like, can my body figure this out with nothing else going on? No interventions, no experts. Like, is my body enough to know what to do? And it was. So that was a great lesson for me to learn. But that's a little bit about me. And I'm a mom to a 6-year-old who's my stepson, and then a newborn who's 11 weeks old.
And that's amazing, because you have the experience of two different paths, but it's still within the realms of mum. So tell us a bit more about your story of becoming and being a mum, because you have, obviously, you've got the experience of being a stepmom, and now you have a newborn in your world as well.
Yeah, as I was preparing, because I had the questions in advance for this, it is such a story that I feel like I'm still unpacking, because as moms of young kids know, so much of it is just like the grind. You have to be very intentional about doing the work and processing, like checking in with yourself and like, how am I actually like digesting what's happening? And when I became a stepmom, I definitely did not do that in real time. I was just like surviving. And our story is really interesting in that I met my husband when his son was only 8 months old. And we were friends for 2 years before we got married. He was 3. We got married right after he turned 3. And during our time as friends, I spent a lot of time with this little baby and would watch him on the weekends. You know, my husband was a single dad. And so all the support and help was totally welcomed. And I felt really honored that he trusted me with his baby, and he had full custody. So there was lots of opportunities to kind of, well, to get to know this baby and to kind of play mom, because like what single girl doesn't want to like play mom? I mean, like for me, I always wanted to be a mom. My mom stayed at home and that was her primary job, to raise us girls. So it was very much, I was raised around like, that is what a woman does. And so that's my calling and my purpose kind of thing. So it was really fun. And I naively thought we would just like smoothly ride into marriage and motherhood, because me and this little boy had a great relationship before my husband and I became like a couple, and everything happened really fast. We got engaged, and then 3 months later, we got married. And so this little 3-year-old boy, like, yes, he gained like a new mom figure in his life, but he also definitely experienced the loss of like having his dad all to himself. And it's a really complicated dynamic with the bio mom. And so there was a lot of external pressure, some of it spoken, but not necessarily super directly. And some of it just felt to be like a superhero mom, to like swoop in and be his like real mom, like the mom that he never had. And I had never been a mom before. And then you have all the complexities of a blended family. And so that was a huge pedestal to be put on, and a huge like expectation to fulfill. And I just remember being like, I was just kind of surviving. My husband worked really long hours and I was working full time out of the house as well at the time. And so I was doing a lot of the daycare drop-offs and pickups with this little boy, and he was having exploding emotions about everything going on. And I was like, wow, this is not at all what I thought it would be like. And mainly because I thought he would just love having me in his life in this way, because we were great, like I said, great friends as like little buddies on the weekends when I'd watch him. So I think that was it was really interesting to start motherhood out like that, because I always thought I would love being a mom. But the truth is, and I mean, stepmoms out there, like, tell the truth. Like, I did not love being a stepmom at all. It was so hard and it didn't feel warm and fuzzy. I felt really emotionally disconnected from this kid. Like I couldn't access what I thought moms, like real moms, felt towards their kids, this like explosive love, and like you would do anything for them. Like I couldn't access the kind of emotion I thought it would feel like to be a mom either. And I totally understand now, like, it is so different. Like, and he didn't need me to come in and be like his, I don't know, his hero mom. Like, he really just needed me to be a supportive adult presence in his life, and to continue to like show up and be there even when I was getting like rejected again and again and again, which is really, really difficult. But yeah, that was kind of my introduction to motherhood. He's 6 now, almost 7. And, with every developmental milestone kids go through, oftentimes you'll see an uptake in more emotions and more challenges, because they're just going through so much. They grow so rapidly and go through all those phases so rapidly. So we're in a new set of challenges now. But I will say that between when we got married and now, I've been on this journey of learning how how to let go of a lot of the expectations of what I should feel like as a stepmom. Because I mean, there's no sense in telling yourself what you should feel. Like, you're going to feel what you feel. And like, that's just going to be a constant, like, feeling guilty, feeling inadequate if you're just judging how you feel. So I'm like, okay, I don't have to feel warm and fuzzy all the time. That's not my goal. But what do I want for this relationship? Like, what do I hope it to be? And honestly, having a son now of my own, it really makes you stop and reflect too, because you're going to have two little eyes watching how you are relating to this other child. And like, do I really want it to be vastly different? I mean, there's a lot to think through when you think about raising then two kids in the same household and that dynamic. And I think that has helped me soften as well towards my stepson, in the sense of like, how do I want my son to see this dynamic? Do I want it to look like we're always fighting and always butting heads? Or is there, as the adult, I can do the work. I can get here to where I can at least respond more peacefully and less reactive to his big reactions, my stepson. So it's a constant process, but that's where we are today.
And you've said a couple of lovely things already, both in your introduction and telling us your journey of motherhood so far. And I love what you said about before you gave birth, and the advice to you was to remember who you are, because you are so right. We lose ourselves because we don't take the time to just, let's say, put a mark in the sand and go, right, this is who I am as an individual before I become mum. Because actually, unless somebody tells you, you don't know that you're going to lose who you are. You just assume, baby comes along and life keeps on going and everything's fine and it's all rosy and dandy. And it doesn't. We have challenges. And the other thing I liked that you were talking about was, we are adults, and we should give ourselves the time to do some reflection and to decide what being a mum means to us and how we're going to be a mum, as opposed to what it feels like and what I think it often is, which is we just go with it. And your words were, you're just in survival mode, and you don't think that you have the time to stop, take stock of life, and then go, right, okay, I can change things if I want. I can decide to think differently, to respond differently, to speak differently. As mums, we get caught up in the whirlwind of being mums, that you don't go, hey, hang on, if I want to, I can literally stop. And then once I've collected myself, I can then get going again. So I love what you've said. So you've talked about your relationship with your stepmom. Now that you've got a newborn who is about 3 months old now, is that right?
Close to that, yes.
Yeah. Tell us about being a mum to a newborn.
I love what you said. It's such a great recap. And it just like jogged my memory, something that's applicable to what you had just asked, that there are components of motherhood. I mean, because like birth, I've heard this before. I'm not the first one who said this, but like it literally in every way like blows you open. And there's a lot of work in the postpartum period to kind of like getting grounded again in your core, in your center, in your pelvic bowl like area. And I will say though, there are parts of myself that I had not been able to access that I know were really me for years as a single adult, that motherhood has all of a sudden like reawakened. And that's really beautiful and surprising. And I was not expecting it at all. One example of that is growing up, I loved to sing. I was in choirs, and it was just it brought me so much joy. I mean, I was the kid who was singing in the shower and while doing the dishes. I mean, my family knows I was always singing. And at some point, that just like stopped. Like I just went silent and I stopped singing. And I didn't even quite like realize this was happening. I just like noticed, oh my gosh, I don't sing anymore. Like, what is that? And since having a newborn, it feels so intuitive and natural to be like singing all day long to him about what we're doing. And I mean, it's comforting to me, like when he is dysregulated and unsettled. I mean, when that's really hard sometimes for a mom to keep your center when your baby is like, unsettled. For me, at least, the crying, I wear him a lot in a wrap because body wearing, I feel like it's just so appropriate for them as a newborn and so healthy developmentally. But when he's crying and he's laying on my chest, like it is so hard for me to not like go to his energy. And so like singing helps me stay very centered and at peace. And that's what he needs in order to be able to calm down anyways. And so it is such a good tool to use. I feel like in early motherhood, the babies love it. It's calming to yourself. That's a beautiful one that has just been like reawakened. And the other one was, I mean, the world has been through crazy times in the last almost 3 years. And sorry, my husband rides a motorcycle and you might hear it starting. He's leaving for work. Okay. Anyways, and so I have been so isolated. And that was one thing I thought going into motherhood, I essentially had no friends, no moms, no really kind of network of other women in the same life phase. I mean, that's honestly, I think also what made stepmomming so hard is that I found a couple podcasts and whatnot, but in my real everyday life, there was no young 25 or 24-year-old stepmoms who I could just talk with and be like normalize what I was going through on a face-to-face level. And I knew I didn't want that. I mean, I hear all the time, like, don't try to do motherhood alone. But I was like, but where are the people? And so what's so crazy, maybe it's just the magic of babies. They are an automatic conversation starter. I feel like everywhere you go, people want to ask how old your baby is, what's his name, or whatever. And it has like, I mean, I also had a lot of social fear as a teenager and in my early adult life, like a lot of social anxiety. But like having this baby, it feels so natural to talk to people. And I've made more friends and connections in the 2 months that my baby has been almost 3 months born than I have in years prior. And that is so beautiful. Like, I feel like I finally have a community of women who value the same things I do. And I can text if I'm having a hard day, or if I have just a random baby question, or like I was wondering if we could borrow any winter clothes because it turned just freezing cold here all of a sudden. And I was like, I have a community of women who have tons of babies. Like, instead of going out and buying stuff, I should just ask if some moms would let me borrow some clothes for the season. And a mom jumped in right away and is like, oh, I have some beautiful items for you. So that is so rich. And I am so grateful for just that. I don't know, the way having a baby has opened me up to being with other people and letting them into my life and being a part of theirs. And that is so beautiful and so life-giving in a season where, there's a lot of drain on you when you have a baby. And that's just like I don't know, it's been a really healthy thing for both me and baby to have people around us.
I think that's so lovely so as you were talking, I was thinking your baby has given you that inner confidence just to maybe in a way, this might sound a bit weird, but maybe in a way forget the stuff that you may be focused on that stops you from making friends, because you're now in the moment, you're now more present because you're with your son. And so you've relaxed, maybe you found that inner peace, and because the chatter might have gone away or at least quietened. I think that is so amazing. And to have, like you said, we're, as women, back millions of years, we were a tribe. We helped each other out. We were a community. And the way that life has evolved, everything has become more fragmented, where that community, we have to work hard to have that community. So the fact that you've now got a community around you where you will support each other and you can call on each other, which as mums, that's what we do, don't we? We re-find the community that we need to support us whilst we're going through this initial phase of, oh my goodness, where is the manual for being a mum? Because there isn't one. We're all unique. The babies are unique. So yeah, I think that's lovely what you've just shared with us, Erika.
Yeah, you're intuitive. Like I can tell you're so spot on because the self-judgment piece, I think, was huge I mean, first of all, let's talk about on an energetic level. Like when you're in self-judgment, you actually repel people from wanting to talk to you. Like you're putting out this energy, like, don't look at me, don't come near me, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
And that a lot of that has just kind of dripped away because I mean, I think I've heard this before too, but as a mom, you're kind of just like, I don't care. I mean, like the baby's fed and clothed and clean. Like maybe I did or didn't shower or my hair, hasn't been washed in a couple days. Like, but the baby's alive, it's like, and I don't know. I think that piece for me, having the baby has helped me reorient my priorities. Like really, like nobody's thinking about like when I washed my hair last. I mean, unless I go like forever, but it's like if it's been a couple days, literally nobody cares or notices. Like that's my own self-consciousness. And I think it's helped drip away self-consciousness and self-judgment, which automatically opens you up to, I mean, people are walking up to me. It's like it's magnetizing when you're more confident in your own skin and less worried about what everyone's thinking about you. So it's just amazing to see like that small shift too. So yeah, it's been really rich.
It sounds like you've sort of had your own rebirth as part of giving birth,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
so beautiful. So there'll be women who are listening to this who in themselves might be feeling overwhelmed because they may have just entered a relationship where they could be a blended family. They may be pregnant at this moment in time and thinking, oh, all right, so I've heard all these wonderful things about becoming a mum for the first time. But then there'll be women who are listening to this generally who could be feeling overwhelmed and who can hear from what you're saying. They're going, oh yeah, yes, I get that, and that's how I'm feeling. What advice would you first of all give anybody who's about to step into a relationship where it could be a blended family?
Yeah, that's such a loaded question. So from my own experience though, I would say do not have any expectation about your feeling. That for me was, I mean, I had no way to even know that, I mean, until I got in it, that I had such high expectations for how it would feel to be a stepmom. And then when they weren't met, I was so devastated. And I think it would have been helpful for me if I had like an older, wiser like person along the journey to be like, sit down and think about what you actually want this relationship to look like. How, like, what are your goals? Like, why are you here? And I thought it was a goal enough to be like, I'm just going to try to be the mom he never had, sort of thing. That's, kids, he didn't want another mom. He doesn't really want another mom. He does call me mom. So that's a little bit complex because I kept hearing the word mom, but didn't feel like mom. And it was so complicated. But I would say, like, I'm still getting clear on that now, even. So I think that's something I'm still in process of like, what do I want when he's 18 and he's leaving the house? What do I want him to say about what I was like, what it was like living with me? That he could always talk to me, that I was, easy to talk to and, calm when he needed someone to, when after a hard day and he just needed someone to listen, or that I was respectful of his boundaries and just like what he needed as far as like what role. I mean, asking him as they get older too, like what role do you want me to have? Like, how do you see me? I think that is really important too, because everyone around us wanted us to be mom and child. But I know he didn't want that, but he was too little to articulate that. And I didn't feel like this was going the way I thought it was. So I don't know, that might seem really like not quite as tangible, but I wish I would have had another idea of what I could be for this child besides just like this hero mom. And now I'm looking at it more from the perspective of like long term, when he's grown it out of the house, how do I want him to feel about, how did it just feel to have me in the home? Like, was it warm? Was it caring? Was it approachable? Like some of those sorts of words. And I can embody that regardless of how he's feeling in the moment. I could still stand true in those values I hope to display to him later on when he looks back and as an adult can understand more of our dynamic and what happened.
And I think what you've said there regardless of whether somebody's listening to this and they might be a stepmom or they might be the auntie, but they've got primary care responsibility. I think that's a great way of looking at how do you want to be a mum, by fast forwarding into the future and go, right, at that point when my child is an adult, what do I want them to be thinking about how I mothered them? What are those key words? And that, like you said, that's easier to live up to rather than having this vision of being, well, you know, we all want to be a great mum, but we don't necessarily know what a great mum looks like. It's picking out those words to say, well, you know, how can I be the best for them? And what does that mean to them when they eventually have to, when they become an adult?
Yeah, and like take the power back. Like don't let how you act, like how you live in your home be determined on how someone's treating you. Because like the problem is like it was so much like, well, once he loves me and appreciates I'm in his life, you know, then everything's gonna be harmonious. And it's like, no, don't wait for that. Like you can start to embody what you want him to look back and see, you know, what it was like to live with you. That's on you. That's all stuff you can do regardless of whatever is happening around you. And I think that for me was like, I need to be responsible for how I'm showing up regardless of what he does. I think it just it makes you feel like you do actually have some control. Like really the only control we have, as we know, is how we're showing up and how we're responding, and are we doing our work to be the healthiest version of ourselves for our family.
And then reflecting now on the fact that you've got a newborn in the house and you've got your stepson, there will be women listening to this saying, well, you know, that is about to be my situation and I'm not quite sure how to navigate that. What advice would you give them if they are feeling overwhelmed about, you know, what's about to happen and how life is about to change?
If they're bringing a baby into like a step family dynamic, yeah, I had no idea what that would actually feel like, because, you know, you hear stories, but every family is different. Every, you know, siblings are going to respond different. My partner actually has responded really different than I imagined, because I thought he single-handed, you know, raised this baby, his first child, by himself. So even like how he was going to show up, I had expectations that were totally different than how it's actually worked out. So I think going back to dropping expectations is really important. But I also think like let yourself enjoy it. Like don't feel guilty that you feel different. And I know for me, I feel so in love with this baby. You know, it's like I'm always afraid of like I'm smothering him because I can't stop kissing him. I'm just so obsessed. You know, he's just adorable. And that's okay. That's okay to just love it. And yeah, and to enjoy it. And I think that it's really interesting to go from being stepmom to mom of a baby, like of your own. I think if you go the other direction, like my husband went the other direction, like not that this baby's a stepchild, but like this is a second baby. There's just a lot of dynamics. He's already raised a newborn before. And so, you know, not only that, my baby is a firstborn and a secondborn. To one parent, he's a secondborn. So he has that dynamic. And to the other, he's a firstborn. And so there's just, it's so complex. But I would say, and bringing a baby into a family where you already have another child is challenging for your partnership, because there's now two kids and two adults. And so like finding the time to like meet in the middle and reconnect, we are still trying to figure out that dance. So I would say just like give yourself lots of permission to feel what you're feeling, and then just show up to what is. Like drop the expectations and show up to what is in the moment. And I mean, I thought my stepson was going to be really jealous, and I was like preparing myself to have to like protect this baby from his jealousy, and like that hasn't happened at all. So like just don't feel like you need to have any ideas or constructs about what's going to happen. Just wait to see what does, and do your work ahead of time, though, as far as like talk to your partner about some of the things, maybe if you're in a partnership, like that you're feeling about how it might, you know, shuffle the whole deck of blended family, because it definitely has shuffled our deck in a big way. And I think that's one of the other gifts that motherhood has ushered in, and this baby has, is my husband and I have grown tremendously through the pregnancy. We did so much deep work on a relationship that really needed to happen, and it's continued into even though like our time together is so much less since the baby's been born, we entered parenthood together so much more grounded. And I think maybe that's the biggest piece of advice too, is like, if you're bringing an ours baby into a blended family dynamic, really look at your partnership, because it's going to be really tested. At least ours really was. And if you have that foundation like that, at least in the chaos of raising two kids, young kids, like that helps, because you might not get to connect with them as often, but you have a stronger foundation where that's not as taxing on your relationship, versus if you enter in and you're really disconnected already. I mean, it makes sense to me why I hear of a lot of people getting divorced in the first year of their child's life, because it does really, really test your framework. And I'm grateful my husband and I had the opportunity in pregnancy to really firm up like our relationship, so that we have a little bit more to ride out on until we get the schedule and like figured out how to still have time together with a newborn and a 6-year-old. So hopefully that helps people out there.
That will help. That will, because it's the benefit of your experience. So, and it's exactly what you said a minute ago about being, it would have been better or been more helpful if you would have had someone with you who had already gone through that you can just, well, you know, is this what you felt? How would you act in this situation? Just someone like a mummy mentor, I suppose, in a way. It just would benefit us so much. So we're gonna wrap up this episode now, but before we go, I have 2 more questions for you. The first one is, what 3 things would you like our listeners to take away from this conversation today?
Motherhood is an opportunity to get to know yourself deeper. It's going to unlock like little gems and treasures of like who you are that maybe you hadn't been able to access for a long time or before ever. And that's really exciting. I think we talk too much about how you lose yourself when you become a mom. And I don't think that's true. I think that the parts of you that really weren't you, I think fall away, the layers, and the parts of you that are, if you let it, if you're like open to this, the parts of you that are really, really you become exposed. And that is, I mean, it's such a huge personal development opportunity. And I think just be ready for that. And don't listen as much to the whole you're going to lose yourself thing, because that's just going to like be depressing. So, I mean, there's parts of you that you, I mean, maybe you don't, you know, wash your hair as often, you know, it's like, but for me, I would trade that for having such a rich mom community now. You know, it's just, yeah. So that's my one thing. You said 3 things?
Yes.
Okay. The other one would be showing, like continuing, and we alluded to this, I think, in the beginning of the conversation. My mom brain is so, it's all jumbled. So I can't even remember what I said 15 minutes ago, but it's really important still in the newborn phase to make sure that you are setting aside time for your own growth and development, and like tuning into, how am I doing? For me, once I got out of the crazy like first couple of weeks of postpartum, I really did try to reintegrate a daily yoga practice of like 15 minutes. And then I've been reading a lot more. I mean, we find as moms, like if you're nursing your baby, you have all this just like time where you're engaged in a baby activity, but you're not really doing anything else. And so it's so easy to just scroll on your phone. But I'm like, that doesn't really, I mean, I get done with that and it doesn't feel great. I don't feel like I've been enriched in any way. I still feel drained. So like, why don't, you know, for me, like that was something I never thought I had time to do before I had a baby. And now I am just voraciously getting to read all of these really interesting books because I'm nursing all the time. So like, find something to do in that space where you're just doing baby stuff that enhances your own personal development and growth, so that you're both like, you're feeling nourished while you're nourishing your baby, and it's not just all drain. So that would be something that's been really helpful for me. And then just communicate the heck out of what you're experiencing with your partner and what you need. And like every week, even in your postpartum journey, if you're early postpartum, it's going to change. And so I think for me, like, it's been important to be able to voice to my husband, you know, this week at night, I needed you to do diaper changes, but like now this week, it's more helpful if you're doing laundry, you know, and keeping up on that. Or it's just going to ebb and flow as the baby's needs change and you go through different like stages. That for me, I'm surprised at even how much I need to just continue to really work on clear communication and letting people know what it is that I need if they ask, and being open to it. I think that's hard too as moms. I feel like I can do everything best for my baby. But like we alluded to earlier, that's so actually unnatural. Like it's so new that moms try to do everything and raise a baby single-handedly. That is so foreign. I mean, I remember listening to a podcast, she was talking about like more intact hunter-gatherer cultures. And she said that she, knew a woman who said she didn't know who her mom was till she was 3 years old, because so many women were participating in her care. I mean, they were even like nursing each other's babies. She doesn't remember like knowing her mom distinctively until she was 3. And I was like, I can't even imagine that in our culture. But that for me is, I'm still working on letting go and figuring out where to let other people in ways that fits and feels really good for me, because I know I can't do it by myself, but I also feel so like protective and want to like cocoon this little baby. So I need to, I know that it will be important for him to have other people surrounding him too, and for me too, to not get burnt out. So
yeah. Oh, I think those are 3 really important takeaways, because like you said, communication, we need to be able to tell people what we need so that they can help us, if nothing else. And I mean, I talk about me time all the time, and we are the most important people in our individual lives. So if we're not looking after ourselves, then we can't be at our best to look after the other important people in our lives. So I love your takeaways. So before we finally end this episode, there will be women who are listening to this who are thinking, I need to get in contact with Erika because she talks so much sense to start with. And also I can relate to a lot of what she has to say. So make it easy for our listeners. How can they contact you?
Yeah, so I will say 2 ways. You can go to my website, www.wirth.wellness. That's WIRTH, wellness.org. And I have a podcast and a blog and resources on there. And I'm still continuing to add and jumping back into podcasting now that the baby's born and we're getting into a flow. And then on Instagram, I am at Wirth Wellness by Erika. And that's where you can also catch kind of the latest and day-to-day life and that sort of thing. So those are the best places right now to get in touch.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Erika, for talking to us today. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, Maria, for having me. I've enjoyed our chat.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast episode. And if you did, then of course, please share it with other mums. I have lots more resources for you that will help you on your journey through life. Just visit my website to access them, which is mummyonabreak.co.uk. You can also find out details about my book, Busy. Take care and see you the next time.